Do the New Orleans Saints have the worst roster in the NFL? All right, so today the video, Check the Mic from the 3013, their podcast. So they went through the top 5 best rosters in the NFL and then the top 5 worst rosters in the NFL. They actually did more than 5, but according to them, they're number 32, the worst roster in the NFL, they believe is the New Orleans Saints. So we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to talk about it, and my blood pressure will probably spike.
In the NFL, who you got?
The New Orleans Saints, I believe, have fairly inarguably the worst roster in the NFL right now, in part because
I'm with you.
Their quarterback battle is a 3-way competition between Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, and Jake Haener. And that.
So here's the foundation of this whole thing. I disagree with this. I don't see any way how you can look at the roster and say this is no doubt about it the worst roster in the NFL. Okay, now I'm gonna play just a little bit of what they said about the Titans, and we'll kind of juxtapose that.
Solid players up and down the roster. I don't think they're definitely destined to win four games this year or anything. I think they'll be better than last year. I also put that crazy stat out there that the defense didn't give up a ton of yards, but they gave up all those points, and special teams was awful, and that's a big part of the reason why they were picking number 1 overall. So there's a chance they get better this year, especially if Cam Ward, shows some of those dynamic, downfield playmaking skills that he showed in college. But yeah, they're in transition, man. I mean, they were in transition 2 years ago. They decided to go half in, half out. They're now in full transition, and it's a youth movement there. So we're going to see a lot of youth in Tennessee. So they have to be, I would say, second worst right now in the NFL. But I think they're also the team maybe a year from now where that's changing, and you start to see them on the rise.
So the reason I showed you this is because it's kind of the same thing, but it's crazy how different it's all framed. So with the Titans, it's like, well, Cam Ward, maybe they'll be good if he's good. Oh, it's a youth movement. They're in transition, but in a year they could be better. We'll see about this. But then when it gets to Tyler Shuck and the Saints, it's like, well, the Saints are the worst roster because of this unknown at quarterback that's going to be horrible. Cam Ward is just as much of an unknown at quarterback. I understand Cam Ward was drafted first overall, but that just doesn't matter anymore. That does not matter once the games start. Whether you're drafted first overall, second overall, 20th overall, 40th overall, it doesn't matter. Okay, the fact of the matter is these two hombres know as much about how successful Cam Ward will be as they do about how Tyler Shuck will be. All right, so it's like the same answer for all these teams, really. Like the Patriots, for the Browns, for the Saints. Like it's all the same of, well, we really don't know what's going to happen, right, at quarterback. We don't know what's going to happen with Drake May or Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders or however that plays out. And we don't know what's going to happen with Tyler Shuck. But in one area, it's like, well, it's a transition. They're young. We'll see. Maybe they could be better or whatever. And on the other hand, it's like, nope, no doubt about it. No doubt this is the worst roster in the NFL.
Fairly inarguably the worst roster in the NFL right now, in part because
I'm with you.
Their quarterback battle is a 3-way competition between Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, and Jake Haener. And that I struggle to see a world where the winner of that competition brings even average quarterback play at the NFL level. And it's not like the rest of the roster around him is good enough to prop that up. So,
all right, so here is the reason why I don't think the Saints can be considered the worst roster in the NFL. Because last year, they didn't have the worst roster in the NFL. And the roster last year was ass on a stick, okay? It was a bunch of undrafted players. It was a bunch of free agents. It was a bunch of guys who were on practice teams or who aren't even in the league anymore. It was a revolving door at center, at left guard, at right guard, at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver. Everyone was hurt. Not to mention Taysom gets hurt. Demario Davis is hurt for a little bit. Marshawn Lattimore gets traded. And even that team last year with Dennis Allen as the head coach, all that stuff we just talked about was 27th overall in team grade, 23rd on offense, 30th in defense, 26th in special teams. They gave up the 19th most points, and they scored the 24th most points, and were 5-12. Okay? So if you take that team and that horrific roster and you upgrade all those positions, because here's the deal. Take what I'm showing you right here. Here's the fact of the matter. You are upgraded at safety with Justin Reed. You are upgraded at center with Eric McCoy. You are upgraded at wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 with Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, and Rashid Shaheed. You are upgraded at running back with Alvin Kamara over whoever was playing. And you are upgraded at quarterback no matter who it is. You are upgraded at head coach. You are upgraded at defensive coordinator. You're upgraded all over the place. All right? So, and you're upgraded at left tackle and right tackle because now you have Banks and Fuaga, whereas last year, not yesterday, you had Tulise Fuaga and Trevor Penning. You could be upgraded at left guard as well, depending on how Trevor Penning plays. That's the bottom line. That's it. So if the roster last year wasn't the worst roster in the NFL, how the hell can the roster this year be the worst roster in the NFL? That is the crux of why I don't think this makes any sense.
Yeah, I think the Saints have the worst roster now.
Yeah, I agree. And I brought out the stat. I think it was probably on draft weekend or when we were reviewing the Saints draft. This year they drafted 9 players. This is the first time, I think it was, that they were above 7 players drafted since 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, and so, yeah.
And what happened? What happened? Do y'all know what happened? I mean, it's amazing how similar and how obvious the playbook is, and people are confused. What happened in 2015, 2016, 2017? The Saints were bad. Leading up to it, the Saints were bad. The Saints were exiting one winning window and entering another. They had to get cheaper and younger and more impactful with their young players, so they have these huge draft classes. 2016, 2017, arguably two of the best draft classes in NFL history, certainly two of the best draft classes in Saints history, and then the Saints are dominant from 2016 on until Breeze retires. What happens now? We got to get younger, we got to get cheaper, we have to do whatever. We're coming out of one window, entering another window. All of a sudden, the Saints draft a bunch of draft picks for the first time in 10 years. I wonder why. Because they're showing you exactly what they're doing. So, just like in 2016, if all of a sudden these draft picks this year hit, Tyler Shuck, if all of a sudden these draft picks hit and the Saints have this impactful youth movement, what is going to happen is in a couple of weeks, these kind of folks are going to say, damn, well, hold on a second. The Saints have Tulise Fuaga, Kelvin Banks as their tackles on rookie deals. They have Eric McCoy, who's one of the best centers in the NFL. They have Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler, who is an average to above average quarterback. They have Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, who's a pretty damn good wide receiver room. They have Danny Stutzman, a linebacker, who might be the defensive rookie of the year. That's what's going to happen, is all these players are all of a sudden going to be playing, and these guys who are looking at metrics of Dante Pettis and MVS and Kevin Austin and Bub Means and Mason Tipton and Connor McGovern and who the hell ever else, they're going to be looking at those metrics like, well, wait a minute, what's happened? How is this? Wait a second. You're telling me Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks is better and more efficient and has better numbers and more impactful than the combination of Stone Cold Kevin Austin, Mason Tipton, and Bub Means? Who could have guessed?
Again, you're allotted 7 picks. Most teams end up with more, either through comp picks or trades. And sometimes, every now and again, teams end up, it has to balance out somewhere. But there's comp picks. You're allotted 7 plus comp picks. Most teams are going to be over 7.
Yeah, you have to actively work to get less than that.
Yeah, and the Saints have a history. Now, recent years, they've been right around 7, right? They've been right at 7. But
this is why the Saints don't draft 7 picks all the time or during that 10-year stretch. When you are winning and when you are a good team, you don't have room for 8, 9 players. They're not going to make the roster because you have good players on the roster. So if you're in a winning window and you don't have room for those picks, you're better off moving the picks to trade to try and get players or whatever that's going to actually be assets for you. That is the reason. It makes no sense for a team chasing a Super Bowl with stars all over the place to draft 9 players. What are you going to do with them? They're not going to play because you already have all pros. You already have good players on the team. That's why you're winning.
My whole point in this is they had so many years of 6, 4, 6, 5, back to back to back to back, and that just depletes your depth.
Yeah, I know, and that's what happened last year. And then what happened this year? We drafted 9 players. Like they're taking what happened last year, and they're taking all of those issues, and they're acting like they're the same issues this year. We have remedied the issues. I mean, like, it's the same song and dance. Dead cap, salary cap hell, old roster, no draft picks. And then all of a sudden, we have cap room, we have a young roster, we have the youngest coaching staff in NFL history. We've just drafted 9 players. We've got a youth movement going on. It's like no one is paying attention to the fact that the issues are being worked on to be resolved. I can't sit here and say they are resolved. We haven't seen the team play. But it's the exact same thing that happened 10 years ago to where, yeah, the Saints all of a sudden are getting bad. They go 7-9, whatever it was, 3 years in a row. And okay, the window's over. The roster's depleted. The roster's not good anymore. Then all of a sudden, here come 2 giant-ass draft classes. Well, LOL, now they're good again. Same thing's happening now.
Over time, especially, we talk a lot about, like, hey, the Lions are on this run, man. They are on this run of making great draft picks. It is so difficult to sustain. I mean, 2017, the Saints had maybe the best, one of the best player-for-player drafts you'll ever see. Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara, Alex Anzalone, Trey Hendrickson.
It's crazy.
All in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
All hits. Unbelievable. Not even all hits for them, but just all hits. Since that point, it's been hit or miss. And that's why they're here. That's my big why they're here. The defensive line's depleted. The secondary is depleted. The offensive line is depleted. The receiving core is depleted. The quarterback situation is what you told me, right? So I go...
Okay. Is the offensive line depleted? It was last year. Is it right now? No. Does anyone think the offensive line is depleted? We just drafted Kelvin Banks. Top 10 pick. We have Banks at left tackle, Penning at guard. If he doesn't work out, we got Dillon backing him up. We got Eric McCoy at center. We got Cesar Ruiz at right guard. We got Talise Fuaga at right tackle. Right now, do you feel like the offensive line is depleted? Because I do not. Now, if there's injuries, if we have 4 centers get hurt, Banks gets hurt, Fuaga, whatever, like in any team, if players start getting hurt, retiring, whatever, they're depleted. Hey, guess what? The Lions right now are depleted at center because Frank Ragnow retired out of nowhere at 29 years old. Okay? It is what it is. Don't look at me like that, Sam. It is, right? But as of right now, we got all 5 positions locked and loaded. Saints wide receiver room. Was it depleted last year? Hell yeah, it was. What happened now? We got Brandon Cooks. We got Chris Olave. We have Rashid Shaheed. Cool. Okay. I'm feeling pretty good about the wide receiver room right now. Would I call it depleted? Absolutely not. Nope. So it's like people look at last year and they try and answer 2024 or 2025 questions with the 2024 study guide. You got to factor in all the new players that are coming off the injured list. You have to factor in all 9 draft picks, and you can't have the same answers for last year as you do coming into this year.
The high-end position groups that need to be good are all question marks on the Saints right now.
Yeah, definitely a huge part of it. And obviously, I think this is ultimately, like, they were kicking the can down the road for the better part of a decade, trying to extend the Drew Brees window to win another Super Bowl. And I think this is the last vestiges of that, like, really coming home to haunt them and to...
That was, again, I'm getting pissed off. I'm not going to lie to anybody here. Because it was last year. Last year was that. Last year was where you're looking around going, man, we don't have any draft picks. We don't have any money to spend. We have all these injuries. We cannot replenish. So we're just going to have to roll with Bub Means and Mason Tipton and Kevin Austin Jr. and Connor McGovern and 5th-round rookie Spencer Rattler playing with a center who hasn't even been in the city for more than 2 weeks, with a fired-ass head coach, like with a first-year coordinator, throwing to receivers who are undrafted, who are practice squad players who have no idea what's going on. That's what the situation was last year. That's where we were dealing with the last bit of that, kicking the can down the road, really paying for it. But now we are not. Now we have 9 new draft picks. We got all these players. We signed Justin Reed. We've got a brand new coach. We got a brand new coordinator. We're cool. We're good. We're in the same transition period or whatever that they're talking about for the Titans or for the Patriots or whoever else. We're in that same world. Like the Patriots, right? Oh, they got Stephon Diggs. What's better? What do you think is more impactful? The Patriots going and getting Stephon Diggs or Chris Olave being healthy? Well, unless you are a 24-year-old Instagram thought on a yacht, Chris Olave is more impactful, okay? Unless you're reaching for a baggie, that's the only way Stephon Diggs is more impactful, all right? But because it's a name, because it's a new move, because it's, they signed him versus Chris Olave is just returning, it's going to get a lot more press.
The impact of it being felt. I think they are changing how they do things. I think they are moving in a better direction. Obviously, that's a big part of that is finding the quarterback, and they were not in a great position for that this year, right? Number one, teams seem to view this draft as kind of like a 1 quarterback deep draft, but even then they were picking at 9. If they didn't like Shedeur Sanders, this was basically all they could do is, well, who do we like? Let's try and get one at the top of the second. Tyler Shuck ends up being the guy. It's probably a placeholder, right? It's probably we're effectively punting on quarterback this year, rolling the dice a little bit.
Or the coaching staff thinks that he could be good, and they drafted him because they think he's good. And that's it. Maybe that's the case.
But next year is when we're going to be looking for the guy. But
why would you do that? That is so dumb. Why would you take a quarterback if you're saying, yeah, we're punting on quarterback this year, and we'll just take one next year? If that truly was the situation, you would take another position at 40 and then roll with Rattler, Haener, or whoever. You wouldn't take a quarterback at 40 with the mindset of, yeah, we're punting on quarterback this year anyways. We're just going to take one next year. Brother, it's the 40th overall pick. It's not like you're taking one in the 5th round or 6th round. You're taking one at 40. You're not taking one at 40 if you're going to say, yeah, we'll just take one next year. Don't worry about it. You're taking that player in the 2nd round because you think he can be good.
But again, like a bit.
Imagine a different position. I mean, this is just blowing my mind. Imagine a different position being like, yeah, I know they took Jack Besh at 40. I know they took a wide receiver at 40, but they're really kind of punting at the receiver position. They were saying they're going to take one next year. What? You don't think they took the guy at 40 because you think that he'll be good?
Like we said this, I don't think this is as bad as rosters have been in the past. Like it is, I think, comfortably the worst roster in the NFL. I don't think it's like years away. Like this is a 5-year project that's going to take them, to rebuild. I think they could put this thing back together pretty fast if they find.
The part that aggravates me, and the main thing I'm debating here, is not that the Saints aren't the worst roster or that they won't be or whatever. It's that they are, no doubt about it, the worst roster. Because there are a handful of teams like the Browns, like not even the Browns. The Browns are the worst, but like the Titans, where, yeah, okay, if some of this stuff works out, cool. Like if some of the stuff works out with the Titans, you're like, yeah, okay, they could be good. If Cam Ward's really good, or if the wide receiver room kind of comes together, or maybe Tony Pollard has a big year, whatever. But like if you look at their roster compared to the Saints roster, okay, let's just go like to the Titans. If you go to and we look at some of the stuff, like 31st overall last year, 31st on offense, 30th points allowed, 27th point. But anyways, you go look at the roster. All right. So you have Cam Ward, no clue what you're going to get there at the most important position, just like the Saints. Wide receivers. All right. They invested in the wide receiver room. So now you got Calvin Ridley, you got Tyler Lockett. Like, all right, you're throwing some resources in there. We'll see what happens. Running back. You got Tony Pollard. You got Tajay Spears. Tony Pollard, I would much rather have Alvin Kamara than Tony Pollard. Okay? No doubt. Offensive line, I mean, you're looking at it, right? Like you got nothing special. Zietler's good, but whatever. Nothing standing out. Defensively, same thing. Nothing really standing out. Okay? My whole point is that you can't look at this roster and then look at the Saints roster and be like, no doubt about it. No doubt this roster's better than the Saints roster. No way. Same with all these other teams. Same with the Browns, okay? The Browns are horrible. Horrible. 26th overall, 32nd on offense, 32nd in points scored, 27th in points allowed. Why are they not undoubtedly the worst roster? Look at their quarterback room. You have fifth round quarterback. A fifth rounder could be starting in Shedeur Sanders. A third rounder in Dylan Gabriel could be starting. And if those two don't start, you're stuck with Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, who are horrible. All right. Wide receivers. Look at these bunch of losers. All right. Halfback. Look at these bunch of losers. Look at these guys. Jerome Ford, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, Amani Marshall, Pierre Strong Jr. Pierre Strong Jr. Who the fuck is Pierre Strong Jr.? All right. Where is any talent at all on this team? Myles Garrett, right? That's it. Okay, cool, sweet. Myles Garrett, confirmed good. All right. Mason Graham, who knows? Okay. Offensively, this is so much worse than the Saints. So much worse. Who would you rather have? The entirety of this quarterback room, or the Saints quarterback room, all of these wide receivers, or Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, this halfback room, or Alvin Kamara, the tight ends, Harold Fannin, no idea what he's going to be, Brendan Bates, Trey McKitty, Blake Whitehart, David Njoku, this offensive line, or the Saints offensive line, like this is what's driving me crazy, is that these two guys can sit up here and say the Saints are unquestionably the worst roster in the NFL when the Browns exist, and the Browns roster last year and the Saints roster last year, the Browns were worse. The Browns were worse than the Saints last year when the Saints were basically a CFL team, and the Browns did really nothing to get better. Whereas the Saints get all these players back, the Saints get all these draft picks, whatever, and the Browns potentially could be starting a fifth-round rookie or a third-round rookie. But, whatever. So it's just honestly, it's lazy at this point to just say, yep, the Saints are the worst, because let me read my notes here. Let me check my notes from the last 10 years that haven't been unchanged. Let me blow the dust off of them. Salary cap hell, kick the can down the road. Let's see here. Trading draft picks. Let's see here. Deplete. Yeah, okay. That's our talking points for the Saints. Yep, worst roster, no doubt about it.
Find a quarterback. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But okay, Chris Olave is a question mark because of concussions, but he's a really good player. Rashid Shaheed is a really good player, albeit one coming back from injury. Brandon Cooks, Foster Moreau, Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Devin Neal now in the backfield. They've got some players that could form a really useful skill position.
Yeah, okay, now do the offensive line. Because if you take a nanosecond, and you just start naming the players in the offensive line, you kind of start putting the pieces together, really quickly you realize, well, all right.
And troop, the offensive line is definitely a weakness, but equally you could see that form,
but young,
compare
right?
that to the Titans. Fuanga, you can imagine that being average.
Fuanga and Kelvin Banks, I thought those were two good picks the last couple of years. Like that, Eric McCoy still one of the better centers in the NFL when he's healthy. There's potential there for sure. It's not. I agree with you. It's not all lost.
Well, brother, what's going on here, my man? Because you just said, well, hold on a second. I agree. There's no doubt about it. The worst roster in the NFL. Hey, but spoiler alert, there's only 5 positions on the offensive line. So if you're like, yeah, actually, Kelvin Banks, Talise Fuaga at the tackle position, and then you have one of the best centers in the NFL. Hey, spoiler, if 3 of those 5 positions are pretty good, it's not the worst. It's not the worst position group on the team. Secondary, yeah. Secondary interior defensive line, are the weak points of the Saints. And really not even the secondary, really just the cornerback room. Because Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Reed are pretty sweet. So cornerback room, interior defensive line, because Carl Granderson and Chase Young have been very productive. And at the worst, they're average. Okay? So interior defensive line, cornerback room, IMO are really the only like tried and true question marks. What I guess you could call depleted. But it's really not depleted. It's just like you don't know what you're going to get. That's the big question marks. Everywhere else, you kind of know. Like everywhere else, you kind of know what's going on.
Like Trevor Penning could be a better guard than he was a tackle.
Yeah.
Cesar Ruiz has had wildly volatile performances from terrible to reasonably good. Like you could picture a world where that offensive line becomes perfectly manageable. Their edge rusher duo, I think, is pretty solid. Chase Young and Carl Granderson now. They could use some depth there, but the starters are fine. Defensive
depth, brother. They got like 10. They got like 10 edge players. The last thing we need is depth there.
Tackle is a wasteland. I think that's awful right now. It's maybe the worst defensive tackle group in football.
Yeah, I can hear
but
that.
Again, like that's one draft pick away from being a different dynamic, right?
That's the whole point. The whole point is there is a world where all of this is manageable, and you're like a defensive tackle away or a cornerback away from being all of a sudden it's like, a pretty good team. Okay, cool. See what's going on here.
Like, I do think it's the worst roster in football, but I don't think it would take that much to make this better.
Yeah, they do have a sprinkling of veterans. Demario Davis still playing pretty high level of football late in his career at linebacker, but that's part of the problem here too for them is Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed. Are those guys going to be a part of the rebuilds 2 or 3 years from now, or are they just? I mean, those are all good starters right now on the defensive side of the ball. Questions at cornerback though, but yeah, I mean, when we're talking about other rosters we've ranked as worst, I keep going back to that Cardinals team where they just got out of this. Everybody on their defensive line should be second string instead of starting, and that was how we described the Cardinals on the offensive line, defensive line, and secondary a couple of years ago, maybe even at receiver, where it's like, man, none of these guys should really start. They're rebuilding. Dolphins in 2019, when they were like accused of tanking and may have been. I mean, within the last 5 or 6 years, there have been some horrendous rosters where there's a team that you look and you're like, this team is destined to pick number 1 overall. They might not get there, they might sneak a couple wins by accident, but there's always a team or two on paper where you're like, definitely the number 1 overall pick type of team. I think the Saints are the worst roster, but again, if they snuck five or 6 wins in the NFC South as well, you're not going to be completely surprised. So
their answer is, the longer they talk about it, the more they're discrediting their own answer. Because if the Saints are just what they were last year, they aren't the worst roster in the NFL. And they were horrible last year. There's no way they can be what they were last year because the players are better. So, if the Browns were what they were last year, the Browns are the worst team in the NFL, right? If the Titans were what they were last year, they're the worst team in the NFL. If the Saints were what they were last year, they're bad, but they're not the worst roster in the NFL. And this team can't be that team because of all the new, the upgrades and the new coaches, and there's not all that stuff happening. So, that's where I just don't get it. If you want to have a time machine and go to last year and say, yeah, man, I'm kind of looking at this roster. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Kevin Austin Jr., Dante Pettis, it's not really a great wide receiver room. No, man, I'm kind of looking at this roster. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jordan Mims kind of starting. That's not really great. Hey, I'm looking at this roster. Spencer Rattler being the starting quarterback, probably not awesome. I would agree. Hey, I'm looking at this roster. Connor McGovern, I know he isn't currently on a team, but he's not a great center. Agreed. No doubt about it. But that was last year. Okay? So ignoring the upgrades, ignoring these, he kind of said it okay, you look at a team, these guys probably shouldn't be starting. Who shouldn't be starting? Last year? No doubt. This year? Who shouldn't be starting on the Saints? Banks, McCoy, Ruiz, Fuaga, Penning. You could argue Penning at left guard maybe, but we'll see. Alvin Kamara, he'll start on basically every team in the NFL. Chris Olave would start on every team in the NFL. Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Jawan Johnson. Are any of those guys these guys shouldn't be starting? Chase Young, Carl Granderson, either one of those guys, Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, any of those guys? No. So what's going on here?
Yeah, I agree. We've softened the blow here on all of this. The 5 worst rosters, but closer to the pack than a linear ranking would suggest.
I think there's more separation at the top of the roster rankings than there is at the bottom. Like, I think there are a clear group of like best rosters in the NFL. But I think the bottom dozen teams in the NFL belong in the same kind of bucket.
Yeah, I agree. It's always an ad, man. I agree. And that's exactly my point, is that when you say undoubtedly the worst, rock bottom, no doubt about it, the worst roster in the NFL,
I think,
and then in the same damn video, you say, well, actually, any of the bottom 12 are kind of the same. That's the point. That's what I'm saying, is that if you look at it at all, like if you look at it and you look at what's, let's look at the standings here, or I don't know if we power rankings. All right, so if you look at the Saints, okay, and you look at like the Falcons and the Jags and the Colts and the, all these teams, like, yeah, any of these teams could be that team. Any of these teams could be the worst roster, or however you phrase it. But none of them are undoubtedly, no doubt about it, the worst. And they just said that. Like they just answered their own thing. In the same video, it only took them like 4 minutes. They talked about this for like what, 6 minutes. They talked about it for 6 minutes, and they went from undoubtedly, no doubt about it, the worst, horrific, I'm vomiting all over my lap. They went from that to, actually, they're kind of right there with the bottom 12. Okay, so 20 to 32 is about, in their mind, like, okay, this is, and I think some of these teams shouldn't even be in there. I don't think the Raiders should be in there, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's just lazy copy and paste garbage, honestly, is what it is. And, a team has to be 32. And I want to make that clear. I'm not debating that the Saints should not be 32. If you want to put the Saints at the 32nd, whatever. But what I'm debating is that they are not, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst roster. And they do belong in the conversation with that bottom 12 or whatever, the below average teams. I have the Saints at being 6-11. I have them as 6 wins. I could see 5, I could see 6, I could see up to 8 or 9, whatever. But I think 6 is probably their landing spot. Okay, so I'm not freebasing hopium, acting like this team's going to win the NFC South. But to sit here and say, the Panthers are just so much better than the Saints. To sit here and say, oh yeah, no doubt about it. Bryce Young had 2.5 good games last year, so I'm all in on Bryce Young. And I love the wide receiver room of Bryson Tremaine, Dan Chesesna, Xavier Legette, David Moore, Adam Thielen, Ted McMillan, who we have no idea what we're going to get out of him. Jimmy Horn, we have no idea what we're going to get out of him. Hunter Renfrow, who was working in super management 6 months ago. Kobe Hudson, Jacoby George, Moose Muhammad III, TJ Luther, Jalen Coker. Oh my God, that's the wide receiver room I want. And then if that wasn't good enough, then we've got Chuba Hubbard, Amani Bailey, Rico Dowdle, Jonathan Brooks, Raheem Blackshear, Trevor Etienne, K'Ron Lynch Adams. Oh my God, what a halfback room. And then if that wasn't good enough, we got the tight end room of Bryce Pierre, Mitchell Evans, Jatavian Sanders, Tommy Tremble, James Mitchell, and Dominic Daphne. Dominic Daphne Duck. This is the same. This is just as many question marks as the Saints. Like this wide receiver room is garbage. This running back room is garbage. This team is ass. Like, look at this. Look at the defense. Look at these numbers. 66th, 48, 56th, 86th, 35th, 69, 72, 67, 118 out of 118. Great season, LeBron. 108 out of 118, 47, 49, 77, 98, 94, 95. Like, where in here is the separator to where you can say, oh yeah, Oh, yeah. I would much rather this roster. And I know I might be biased, but if I'm looking at this roster, and I'm looking at the Saints roster, give me the Saints roster. Give me that. Give me their roster. I would rather the Saints roster than this roster. I would rather the Saints wide receiver room than this wide receiver room. I would rather the Saints running back room over this running back room. I would rather the Saints entire defense over this defense. And the Saints defense last year was the weak part. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry to get so fired up, but it's sickening. I'll see you in the next video. I got to go take a nap.